When I first watched Monster, I thought, what was the big deal? It was just another psychological thriller, and I didn't quite understand why people regarded it in such high esteem. But now I understand that there were two factors that played in favor of my ignorance. First, I hadn't watched much anime, so my understanding of the medium was limited. And second thing which I understood during my rewatch was that I didn't have the mental coordination to process the complexity of Monster's story. Since up till that point I wasn't much used to subtle storytelling. Maybe that's the reason why I don't remember how excellent are shows like Steins Gate and movies like The Silence of the Lambs and Fight Club. These were the shows that were beyond my wits, and I'm not ashamed to admit that. I believe in rewatching/rereading shows or books so that I can understand what certain parts actually contributed to the grand narrative of a certain story. One day I have to reread The Brothers Karamazov too, but yeah, about Monster and why it isn't an anime even though it is an anime. What is anime? In short, any sort of animation that has been produced in Japan and that focuses more on animation aspect rather than the cinematic counterpart, like movies and TV shows. But lately, anime has been associated with much more things. With the advent of shonen anime and moe culture, the medium took a shift, and the over-exaggeration of facial features and actions and the unrealism that has shadowed nearly every anime of recent years has clouded our thoughts to the point of considering anime as a genre and not as a medium. We don't expect something like 12 Angry Men from anime, but more hyper stuff like the Avengers Endgame. We think every anime needs to fit the grand scale of things. It needs to cover and take into account the whole world aspect if possible, and not a subpart of a certain region. There's this piece of belief that the protagonist needs to be the centerpiece of the global events. It must be very grandiose, like something that only the protagonist can do. There's also the case of anime characters being immature. Most of the anime characters don't reflect the real social human behavior. It exaggerates certain personality traits like being too egoistic, too juvenile, or being very reactive in certain situations. And since these aspects have been replicated so many times in nearly every anime that we tend to forget anime was meant to convey a story and not meant to be understood as a class that constitutes these aspects only. And going by the accepted anime tropes which I mentioned, I hereby say Monster isn't an anime. If you consider anime as a medium, it is. But as a genre which is associated with such traits, no, it isn't anime. All this time I thought Legend of the Galactic Heroes and Monster were the only ones which don't follow the traditional anime convenient routes. But now that I think about it, some aspects of Legend of the Galactic Heroes falls in the anime as a genre spectrum, so I chose to make a video on Monster instead. Monster at its core is a story, and neither Madhouse nor Naoki Urasawa thought of giving it the anime mix, because frankly it wasn't needed. This story doesn't need to disguise itself in the anime cover to pass as an awesome show. Monster took into account the daily interactions of actual humans when it tried to put forward the story which provided it with the sense of realism. The anime doesn't fit in any conventional art style. The figure in here do look like actual humans. Tenma, the protagonist, was neither any fighting hero nor did he want to be the centerpiece of the worldly events or the face of justice. What he has was his commitment. He wasn't flashy, which made him indistinguishable among the pedestrians. He was just an ordinary man, and that's what the story meant to tell the audience, that something not so of a grand scale could entangle you in it. The story of Monster isn't meant to be a black and white tale of hero and villain. It was a phase of life that was portrayed wherein even someone like you and I could be part of without our knowledge. Monster wasn't supernatural, and neither were the characters in here miraculous individuals. They were normal people, and this story had them play their part. And Johan was just another villain like all those predators and criminals that the society is unaware of, as he was in the show. Surely Johan was a menacing individual, but he used to be beside the characters and still wasn't, since he was so good at deceiving others by concealing his true intent. And this makes the show even more horrifying if you imagine yourself in it, the possibility of which isn't unlikely to happen since it's all grounded in realism. Monster wasn't a show that's plotted plot-driven unlike most other anime. It was here to explore the characters' mindset and their philosophy and the view towards everything. There is no checkpoint in the story, it continues because even though one character might halt their movement, the other continues to move. So in response, they too need to go forward within the story. More than some scene, you would remember the words of the characters, the interaction with each other. As for how the story was conveyed, Monster didn't display much of what happened, but rather found it convenient to use words to push the narrative. It is so unconventional considering it is an anime that it seems so normal and realistic, because there doesn't exist even a few shows which could claim to have deviated from the standard anime route. Monster has excelled at many aspects, and not following the stereotypical anime characteristics serves only to its repertoire. Now, even though I would want to dive into more depth regarding Monster's many storytelling aspects, but that's not what the video is about. So I would give it a rest for today. Bye.